Here, your South African knife guy. And before I begin, I just wanted to mention a brand new website. I'll mention it again at the end of the video, and that is knifeenthusiast.com. These guys are dedicated to putting the hobby of knife making and knife creating and knife collecting in the forefront. For knife people like us, he wants to be the center of custom knife making, and I think that's a pretty good goal to reach, and I think he's pretty much going to be on his way. You can also check my channel out. It's there on his website, as well as many other knife making resources, knife collecting resources, and information on custom knife making. So let's just get into this video. The knife maker that I'm going to be highlighting today is a gentleman named Clyde Challenor. Now, he is no stranger to the world of knife making, and he's been around for roughly about a decade making knives. Now, the reason that I'm highlighting this guy, not only is he a friend of mine, and not only does he make awesome custom knives like the ones you're seeing in front of you here, which I'm going to go over in a few minutes, but he's got a philosophy of knife making that I really have to respect, and I thought it was kind of important to put his philosophy of knife making out there for others to understand. Now, I don't know where any of you guys are in your knife collecting, if you're a knife collector or if you're a knife maker, but it's always kind of good to put the philosophy of the knife maker somewhere in your mind if you're going to get into this hobby, and I'll explain why. There are tons of knife makers out there. A lot of them are into a lot of flash. They do things like meteorite bolsters and carbon fiber, inlays, and working with really exotic materials like ivory. And you begin to wonder, once you get past buying like production knives like ZTs, Spider Coves, whatever floats your boat as a collector, and you're ready to move up into the next step of collecting knives, and you're thinking about getting your first custom knife, I think Clyde Challenor is probably your best bet. I'll explain why. So in front of you, you see 3 different custom knives made by Clyde Challenor. These 2 here actually look better, wouldn't it, if I did this? Do this deal. Okay, so the 2 on this side here, they're Vipers, and as you can see, they look very, very different. And then this one here is a discontinued knife that he no longer makes. This is called the Raptor. This was at one point one of his premier knives in his collections. He has since stopped creating this knife simply because, number one, it's a 4-inch blade, and people want smaller knives. But he did get into large knife making for a short time. But this is actually kind of a special custom to me because this is actually Clyde Challenor's own personal Raptor, and he gave it to me. He didn't give it to me, but he sold it to me. I wish he gave it to me. He sold it to me because I kept bothering him about it, and he knew I wanted it so bad. So he gave me a price, and I thought the price was very reasonable, so I took it. In any case, just trying to even things up here. In any case, the 2 knives here on the end in this video, wish I could stop finagling around here. Yeah, the two knives here on the end are Vipers. Now, they look completely different, and this is actually the only model knife that Clyde Challenor currently makes at this point in time. And this is the Clyde Challenor Viper. It's absolutely beautiful. We've got a, let me just describe the knives and then we'll get into the philosophy of Clyde Challenor. This one's an all titanium knife with blue carbon fiber inlays on both sides of the knife, right? And then this one, and ghost vipers, meaning you don't see the pivots. They're ghosted. That's what they call it. And this is the only one that he did that to. So this is a one-of-a-kind handmade knife. Now, this one here is also a Viper, but as you can see, the pivots are there. We've got red carbon fiber inlays on both sides of the knife, but take a look at the inlay. They're completely different, right? Let's take a look at that. This one is more of a coffin shape. This one is sort of a wraparound. When he came back in 2019, this was his original concept to create his Viper. He was going to have it wrap around the pivot, and then he realized what a pain in the ass it was to make that, and this is the only one he did like that, and I caught him at the perfect time, and he made this one for me, and I bought it from him. So you can, so these are both one-of-a-kind knives. This one is one-of-a-kind because it's got ghost vipers on it, and this one is a one-of-a-kind because, number one, it's black. It's a black Viper. He's never made a black Viper with the red carbon fiber inlay that wraps around the pivot like that. So those two knives are very special. So now, let's get into what this video is actually about. I was talking to Clyde Challenor about my next custom knife from him, and we talked about a knife maker named Mitchell Clark, who is currently making a knife for me called the Gunstock. And he had never heard of Mitchell Clark at the time. I just kept raving about him, and I think he saw his website after I mentioned him. And it turns out that Clyde Challenor only lived about 45 minutes away from Mitchell Clark. And he goes down there, and he realized that Mitchell Clark makes really great custom knives. And then I mentioned to him that, I mentioned to him, Mitchell Clark is making me my knife. And we talked about my build, and he goes, oh, that's awesome. Well, what kind of knife are you getting? And I said, well, I'm getting a knife with elephorin, which is synthetic ivory. And he goes, really? I said, yeah. And he said, I've never heard of that material. I said, well, it's a new material. And then he hit me with an afterthought, and he said, so do you even know what elephorin is? I said, no. Well, then why do you want it on your knife? And I said, well, it's a brand new material. I like to collect it. I like to have it in my collection. And he goes, okay, but are you getting better performance out of your knife by actually having that material on your knife? And I thought about it. I said, well, I don't know. I just know it's something different. He goes, oh. And then he said, well, how much how much is it going to cost you to make this knife? And I gave him the price. And he said, really? That's a lot of money. I said, yeah, I know. And you're going to go ahead with this? I said, yeah. And he goes, but if you're not, the material itself, if it's not an enhancement to the knife actually performing better, what's the point? And then I realized that that's the kind of knife maker that Clyde Challenor is. He's the kind of knife maker where, if you're getting a custom knife, there has to be something more than just because it looks good. There's got to be a reason behind it, which is why he makes knives the way he makes them. Now, Clyde Challenor believes in attention to detail. Okay, so when he's making his knives, he does CNC machining with attention to detail made by hand techniques. So in other words, let me show you what I'm talking about. If you take a look at his custom knives, he doesn't give you a lot in the way of aesthetics, right? But he makes up for it in a lot of different ways. So, for example, you know, you've got knife makers out there that are working with meteorite, they're working with real ivory, they're working with, you know, Damascus and all these new and exciting and exotic materials, and they just plop it onto a knife with possibly an intention or afterthought as to why the material's on the knife, maybe not. But with Clyde Challenor, there's no question. If he puts a material on your knife, there's a reason behind it. And he's going to put the knife together in such a way that, you know, it's going to more than satisfy you. So let's just take a look at what Clyde Challenor does, because you have to really look at the details of his knife building and how he works. And he's hoping that when you buy one of his knives, you're going to appreciate how hard he works to make the knife as perfect as it possibly can. So let's take a look at a few things. Now, some of the things that I'm going to point out to you, you may never really think about all that much. For example, centering. Okay, now everybody knows that centering on a knife's got to be perfect. Okay, Clyde Challenor's centering is perfect every time. He won't even release a knife unless the centering is perfect. And take a look at that. Just take, I mean, that is dead centered. You have to appreciate that if you're a knife collector of any kind. That's one. Number two, the action. Take a look at the action, because the action on his knives are exactly the same. Okay, they are nice and smooth, but they're not fall shut, and that's part of Clyde Challenor's philosophy. He doesn't believe that knives should fall shut. He actually believes that if knives fall shut, then it's not built correctly, because knives shouldn't fall shut. They should have some give to them. They should be able to pop open with ease, and they should be able to close smoothly enough, but not fall shut. And that's real important to Clyde Challenor. So you're going to have, when you're buying a knife from him, you're going to have to buy into his philosophy. Because I guess why I'm saying that is because in a lot of ways it's for your own good. Especially if you just stepped away from buying production knives and you want to get into customs. Because Clyde Challenor's philosophy is to build a really good custom knife. He's going to give you the bling that you ask for, but don't go insane with asking for a you know, maybe a Damascus pot clip, because he won't give it to you. Don't ask for like a fancy reshaped inlay made of some exotic material, because Clyde Challenor believes if the material isn't going to enhance the performance of the knife, then don't bother putting it on the knife, because the knife can still look good, it can still perform good. So that's the barrier. That's where Clyde Challenor doesn't believe in crossing the line. The knife has to have all the elements in place in order to be a good build, because to him the aesthetics come second. The aesthetics come second. And that philosophy may not be for a lot of knife collectors, but keep in mind, Clyde Challenor is not an aesthetic South African knife maker. He is I will build you the most awesome custom knife you can ever ask for. And he will never go beyond the line of where the aesthetics take over the actual build. Because there's a lot of forethought that go into his knife making. Take a look at his jimping, guys. Have you ever seen jimping like that? It's bigger down at the bottom, and then if you notice up at the top, it's a lot tighter on the jimping. You know why? That's for access to the blade, because this is a tool, and he knows you're going to be using this tool for something. So every time you pop it open, he doesn't want you having too much trouble opening his custom knife. So that's why the jimping is created this way, you know, where it's huge down here at the bottom for actual grip. Do you notice that? So when you're gripping the knife, you're going to use the top portion of the blade as a way to hold on to the knife when you're actually cutting something hard, something that's going to use probably a lot of force. He wants you to be able to grip that knife as good as you possibly can. And that's what the top portion of the blade is for, where the jimping is not quite so tight as it is down here. But if you notice, he put it real tight up at the top, because there's a certain section of your finger where if the jimping were closer together, you'd be able to deploy the knife faster. See that? So again, there's a reason behind Clyde Challenor's knife building and knife making. He's doing it for your own good in the sense that he wants you to be able to use the knife without a problem. So everything he does on his knife is for a reason. Now, on to the aesthetics. This is what I love about Clyde Challenor. You got to look real closely when this guy does stuff like that. Number one, again, I mentioned the centering. It's always dead. But when you notice the centering on his knife, you notice it like you haven't noticed it on any other knife maker's knife. It's just, bam, right on the money on every freaking one. Look at that. Dead, dead, dead. And a part of that is it's always going to be dead. Now, keep this in mind. The tension of the knife, the action of the knife is actually connected to the centering, because he knows that if a knife has the perfect action, the centering will never, ever stray. It will never, ever go over to the right or over to the left. The tension helps keep it dead centered. Now, if you don't realize that, you should, because that's what Clyde Challenor does. He makes sure everything on the package is related to some other reason. So, because think about this. If a knife falls shut, and they do on certain knives, I'm not going to mention knife makers they are, but that can be seen as either a negative or a positive. But with Clyde Challenor, in his opinion, that's a negative. But there are knife makers that I'm not going to mention who do have their knives fall shut. Why? Because they're catering to the request of the knife buyer. If they say they want their knife to fall shut, they will try and figure out a way to make it fall shut. What happens afterward, I guess they're going to deal with it at a later date. But Clyde Challenor won't do that. He won't. You can't simply just go to him and say, hey, can you make my knife fall shut? That goes against his philosophy of knife making. He won't do that. He doesn't believe in that, and he's going to expect that you understand that. And the thing about Clyde Challenor is once you buy one of his customs, you buy into his philosophy. It all makes sense. It really is for your own good that the knife is built the way that it's built. So anyway, I got off track. So take a look at the aesthetics. Look at these screws, man. It's only one screw, right? But look how polished it is. Epic Snuggle Bunny mentioned that on his channel. That when Clyde Challenor makes you a knife, the screws are like super polished. Because he doesn't have a lot of aesthetics on here, right? But he wants whatever aesthetics are on here to pop. Okay, take a look at the lines on this thing. Now, this is what I want to show you. Whether the knife is not locked in place, the lines are exactly, they don't go like this is always going to be the half of the other part that doesn't move, you know what I mean? And then, of course, when you lock it into place, it's still the same. You would figure that these would shift just because the frame lock is either open or closed, but it doesn't shift. It's the same, there it is down there at the bottom, and it lines up perfectly. That's how you need to look at Clyde Challenor's aesthetics. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't do that with my other knives. I only do it with his knives because I know that he wants me to appreciate that it's like that. You know what I mean? Other knife makers don't do that, but Clyde Challenor does because of the way he builds them, being half CNC machining and then half made by hand detail. He wants to make sure that you understand whatever made by hand details that are on the knife are going to be really appreciated. Not only that, but these lines are mirrored on the frame lock side and on the show side. In other words, they are exactly in the same exact place on the back of the knife that they are on the front. To sit here and say that must be real easy, it's not. It's difficult to do that. Very, very difficult to do that. And he takes the time to make sure that you notice that about his knives. Finally, the pivots. Now on this knife there are no pivots. This is ghosted. This is a special custom that he had done for me, and it's the only one where he decided to ghost the Vipers. Usually when he does something special, he's experimenting. And the Ghost Viper concept, that was an experimentation, and in this case it was very, very successful because you don't see the pivot at all. And I had to ask him how he did that, and he explained it to me, and it's just pretty cool. But yeah, you don't see the pivots. I mean, they're not there, and you kind of wonder how the hell that. I mean, that would beat, in my opinion, the fact that he ghosted the pivots. That would beat any. I don't know, that would definitely beat any like a meteorite bolster or special Damascus bolster or whatever. That beats the hell out of that easy. Why? Because he took the physical effort to create this knife, to have this illusion on it. And I would go for that any day of the week rather than, say, a fancy inlay or some other fancy material that other knife makers kind of buy in. I don't want to say buy into, but they kind of don't maybe reinvent what they can do as knife makers the way Clyde Challenor does. And which makes his certain kind of knife making very, very special. And then on this knife, obviously he blackened the titanium, same situation. On this knife, he ghosted the pivots. On this one, he blackened it. And this is the only knife that he's done that to, I believe. I'm not sure, but I think it is. But in any case, both of these knives here are one of a kind. No one will ever, you'll never see another one like either one of these ever again. So, yeah. Plus, his builds are real simple in the basics that I only like two types of construction. I like it completely opened like this, right? With just one standoff. That to me is like my favorite build, if you can do that, and nobody does that better than Clyde Challenor. Or the other one where the back spacer is completely covering the entire knife, so it looks like an integral, even though it's not. I love that look also. I'm not into like the whole half back spacer thing, but yeah. So that's one of the main reasons why I would go completely with Clyde Challenor if I'm stepping away from buying ZTs and Spydercos, which, by the way, Clyde Challenor is a fan of. He thinks Spyderco is a great knife company, and they do build really good knives, really good production knives. But in my opinion, if you're thinking about spending the money for a custom knife, yeah, Clyde Challenor is your best bet. Yeah, they're really up there, but I will tell you this much. I mean, they're really up there in price, but I'm going to tell you this much. His knives are a lot lower priced than many other South African custom knife makers. I say South African because that's really the only type of knife that I collect. And I've done a video on that also. I'll probably do a video on why I chose South Africa as my main collecting point, not only because of the relationships that I've built with knife makers like Clyde Challenor and Henny Duplessis, but just because of the way the knives are built and how much pride people from that country put in their knife making like no other country I've ever seen. I just think they do a fantastic job, and it's affected me so much that my collection is exclusively South African. So when you're thinking about getting a custom knife, you might want to consider Clyde Challenor. His philosophy is just perfect for anyone looking to step away from production knives. It's just something you want to kind of consider. And before I close out, on this knife, not close out, but this knife, this knife is also very special, not only because it's his one and only Raptor that was personally his own, but this knife kind of represents his learning, how he's evolved as a knife maker. One way to do that is with the pivots. He was trying again, he was experimenting with his pivots, and at the time that this knife was released, this was his pivot, his signature pivot for a really long time, and one of the main reasons why he made this particular pivot is because he likes to have people be able to access his knives. He doesn't mind you taking them apart if you want to take them apart. So he created this particular pivot at that time because you could take a regular flathead screwdriver and open the knife and take the knife apart and clean it and then put it back together again. The problem with these pivots, and it makes me laugh, is that customers would use the wrong size flathead screwdriver, not giving it any thought, and it would ruin the pivot, and they would all come back looking like swastikas. They wouldn't be able to take the knife apart again because they were using the wrong size. They were using the wrong size flathead screwdriver to take apart the knife. I just laugh my ass off every time I think about that, because he was telling me how many of these knives came back where the pivots were so screwed up. He was like, "Oh, screw that," and then that's when he came out with this pivot. When he came back in 2019, he came back with this particular pivot here where it's completely flat. I forgot to mention, see, his pivots are completely smooth and flat. You don't even feel the pivot on this thing. I can't even tell when I rub my finger across it. I can't tell if I were to close my eyes whether I'm touching the actual frame or if my finger's even going over the pivot, because you don't feel it. It's just completely flat and completely smooth. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, he just stopped making those pivots and came out with this one. Still, same philosophy. He wants you to be able to take apart your knife if you're using it every day and it's being very hard use, right? He wants you to be able to take apart the knife, clean it. And of course now you can take apart his knife just as easy, because look, there's the back side of the knife where you take it apart. This thing pops out, and you can clean the knife. Now this pivot, the way it's designed, he explained it to me. There is I don't know how to explain it, but inside the second, like down here on the second part of the frame, there's a hole that's smaller, you know what I mean, where the pivot just sits in it, and then the more you tighten it on this side, it becomes flush on this side, and the knife gets nice and tight, and everything's back to the way it was. I don't know if you can understand that, but yeah. So to close out this video, because it's been going on pretty long, everything the Clyde Challenor does is for a reason. And you're getting everything in his knife making, all in a neat little package. So to sum up, the Damascus that you're not getting, the really fancy Damascus that you're not getting, the really fancy material that you're not getting, he's going to give it to you another way. On this knife, he did it with Ghost Vipers, polished the screws, and made the centering super dead perfect, maybe action perfect. To him, that's going to make up for all that, I don't want to call it crap, but for all that fancy schmancy stuff that some knife collectors go for. He's going to give it to you another way. You know what I mean? He will make up for it because he knows you're looking for something special, and he never, ever disappoints. That's one of the main reasons why knife collectors and knife enthusiasts like myself and Epic Snuggle Bunny go for Clyde Challenor time and time again. Other knife makers out there that are into Clyde Challenor knives, and believe me, this guy's got a ton of customers. Once you buy into his philosophy, you never go back. I mean, I find myself going every once in a while going, you know what, well, whose knife do I want in my collection? I'll go, you know what, let me just get a Clyde Challenor, man. He never disappoints. It's just that way with him. And I'm sure that if you find that you've had enough of your fill of ZTs, Spydercos, CRKTs, whatever production knives you're into, and you're ready to step up into the world of custom knives, why don't you give Clyde Challenor a shot before you move into any other knife maker? That's what I want to say. Please do that. And you won't be disappointed, because I'm going to be honest with you, this guy is definitely easily one of my top 5. I don't know if there are any knife fans out there that are actually fans of my pathetic channel. I'm going to say pathetic channel because I don't have enough viewers. I don't have enough views to even get free stuff on this channel, but I'm still working to do that. But trust me, you buy a Clyde Challenor knife, and you're probably buying what represents the best of South Africa. This is Omar coming at you again with a little discussion video on Clyde Challenor knives. Coming at you. And again, before I close, I can't do enough to mention the guys over at the Knife Enthusiast and their website. Please check them out. They are trying to do some serious good in bringing the world of knives, knife collecting, knife making, knife enthusiasts all together on their website, trying to bring it into the forefront and try and make it a hobby that we can all enjoy and discuss, because this is an art form as much as it is a tool. And if we can do whatever we can do to bring this hobby to the forefront and make it something that everybody can enjoy, everybody can get into, that would be great. So check out the Knife Enthusiasts and knifeenthusiast.com. Their website is huge. I've checked out their website. There's a lot of things you can do on that website. You can discuss custom knives. You can buy custom knives. You can sell custom knives there. You can give your own opinion on the Knife Enthusiasts. They are for every knife collector like myself who's fairly advanced to people that are just looking to get started. The knifeenthusiast.com is the perfect resource for you. It's going to become the perfect resource for me. In fact, I'm going to be selling some of my knives on their website, and I can't wait for Ari to see this particular video. So Ari, where you are, if you notice, I mentioned you in the beginning of the video, and I'm mentioning you again at the end. I hope you're going to gain more people like myself that are looking to work with you. I know I'm looking to work with you. It's all good and for the good of the hobby and for the good of all of us who love this hobby and are dedicated to it. Once again, this is Omar, your South African knife guy. And if you guys have any comments, questions, please feel free to leave your comments. I'm looking for as many comments as I can possibly get on my channel. I am back. I'm moving forward on my, on this channel. I was thinking about shutting it down, but I decided to move forward because I believe that, because I love this hobby so much. I really can't wait to see where I'm going to go. It's unfortunate that I'm not going to go to Blade Show again, but I will be going next year. So, in any case, to close, once again, check out the knifeenthusiast.com. Check out Clyde Challenor Knives, man. This guy is it. He is it. He will answer all of your questions. You will not be disappointed. He's got 100% guaranteed satisfaction. He never disappoints. And finally, I forgot to mention, the reason he never disappoints is because he was us. He was once a knife collector. Just remember that when you're buying Clyde Challenor knives, he's expecting that you're gonna use the hell out of his knives. He's expecting you're gonna use the hell out of his knives. So, and to my good buddy Clyde Challenor, I'm working to do that. So Clyde, yes, I use this one a lot. Okay, I use it a lot. These two are Save Queens, buddy. I'm sorry. They're Save Queens. But I use this one a lot. But that's a good thing that these two are Save Queens, because guess what, man? You and I are going to work together. You're going to build me another knife. And I promise, that next knife, which is going to be another Viper, that's going to be one that I'm going to use, I promise. But yeah, in the meantime, make me a liner lock, buddy, because I really, really want that liner lock. All blue carbon fiber. I can't wait for that. So this is Omar, your South African knife guy, closing out this video. Really very long. I apologize. Check out theknifeenthusiast.com and check out Clyde Challenor knives. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.